Hello, folks. Welcome. Tonight we step back over 3,000 years into the smoky heart of a Bronze Age palace kitchen in ancient Syria, where your first task of the day is to not die from inhaling wood smoke or tripping over a goat before sunrise. You wake up before the roosters, your back already aching from yesterday's marathon of barley grinding. Outside, it's still pitch black, but inside the mud brick kitchen compound, the fires are already being coaxed to life. A cook with more wrinkles than a dried fig hands you a bundle of dry reeds and nods toward the oven. You get the hint. It's your job to get that fire roaring, or breakfast is going to be a very raw disappointment. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when people are tuning in. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The smoke stings your eyes as you kneel beside the dome-shaped clay oven, known as a tanner, poking at last night's embers with a reed stick like you know what you're doing. Sparks shoot up, and the dampness in the air starts to curl from the sudden warmth, clinging to the low ceiling beams like nervous ghosts. You fan the flames, and a few sleepy apprentices drag in baskets of flour, their tunics dusted white like they'd lost a fight with a powdered donut. But there's no sugar here, not yet anyway. Just wheat and emmer and barley, ground by hand with saddle querns that leave your wrists begging for early retirement. You sit at one of the grinding stations, rhythmically rocking the upper stone back and forth as the sun starts to smear a red streak across the eastern courtyard. Grinding is a slow process, and you start to resent every single grain that has ever existed. A few other workers hum an old tune in a minor key that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby for people who aren't allowed to sleep. But this place doesn't pause. This is the palace kitchen, after all. If someone's not making food, they're falling behind. Flatbread is the first big act of the day, and yours better not come out raw or hard enough to chip a diplomat's tooth. You slap palm-sized rounds of dough onto the hot inside wall of the oven, fingers singeing just enough to keep things interesting. They puff up like pillows, browning fast, one eye on the bread, one on the head cook who is absolutely judging you from the corner. These breads aren't just for the king's table. They are for guards, scribes, messengers, and that guy who always pretends he's on a religious fast just to skip kitchen duty. Historians still argue whether these breads had raised edges or were simple discs. But what's not debated is that bread was the cornerstone of every diet in this palace complex, from the humblest stable boy to the chief astrologer. By mid-morning, the heat is building, and you already smell like charcoal, sweat, and a faint touch of goat. A slave girl with an attitude stronger than your kneading arm carries in a huge platter of date pulp. You'll see it again later in something sweet, or possibly in your nightmares. For now, you're still making breakfast, and breakfast here isn't just flatbread. It's also barley porridge, sometimes mixed with beer or lentils, depending on who's eating. You ladle some out for the guards, trying not to wince at how it sticks to everything, including your skin and sense of hope. You see one guy pick a rock out of his bowl and just shrug. Quality control is not the palace kitchen's strong suit. Back near the oven, you hear someone arguing over who burned the last batch of bread. You wisely pretend to be deaf and keep shaping dough balls. And then, right on schedule, the baker's worst enemy strolls in, the royal food inspector. He smells like scented oil and judgment. He walks past the rows of fresh flatbreads, pokes one, then picks up a loaf and sniffs it like it personally insulted his family. You hold your breath. Then he grunts and walks out. You're safe, for now. One of the newer bakers whispers that the inspector once had someone whipped for serving undercooked chickpea mash to a minor priest. You laugh, then realize he's not joking. Welcome to breakfast prep in a Bronze Age palace. Low pay, high stress, and bread that doubles as a weapon. In between tasks, you steal a look at the scribes already hunched over their clay tablets in the adjacent chamber. One of them is making notes on daily rations. You peek, bread loaves get tallied like gold. 3 for the king, 2 for the head priest, 1.5 for the stable master, who probably complains daily. The records are meticulous, mostly because food equals power here, and the kitchen is where that power starts rising, literally with each bubbling oven and boiling pot. Outside, a camel grunts. Inside, someone drops a pot. The day has officially begun, and you're already behind schedule. But hey, at least you're not on frog duty today. That guy just walked by with a net and a face full of regret. Oh, and the fire, still crackling, still hungry, just like the people you're feeding. Better keep moving. You barely have time to wipe your hands on your tunic before the next wave of chaos begins. The head cook barks your name, or what sounds vaguely like your name, and points to a new pile of flour sacks that need sifting. It's not glamorous, but it's what keeps the bread consistent and the nobles less whiny. You get to it, elbow deep in coarse wheat flour, picking out pebbles, husks, and the occasional beetle with all the care of someone diffusing a very dusty bomb. Because in this palace kitchen, even the flour gets its moment of scrutiny. It has to suit the social rank of whoever's chewing it. The system is strict, better bread for better people. That coarse, heavy barley loaf, that's for the guards and the laborers, cheap, dense, and you can probably use it to fix a cracked wall. The lighter emmer loaves, reserved for the priesthood, scribes, and anyone close enough to royalty to complain without consequences. And then there's the softest wheat bread, fine and white, like cloud fluff if clouds were made from mildly judgmental carbs. That one is strictly for the elite. You're told it's for the king, his family, and whoever else the gods haven't smote this week. Historians still argue whether this so-called elite wheat bread was actually flavored with anything beyond salt and water. Some think they used rare herbs or oils. Others say it was just a better grind, sifted again and again until the flour was smoother than a merchant lying about prices. You shape dough with speed that would impress modern pizza chains. Water is rationed, so you mix it carefully, scraping up every drop that spills. Even one puddle is a luxury. Sometimes you reuse yesterday's dough remnants, folding them into the new batch. Call it ancient sourdough if you're feeling optimistic. Today's mix goes to the middle class, the junior scribes, low-ranking merchants, and that one weird cousin of the queen who always shows up unannounced. As the sun climbs, so does the noise. A runner bursts into the kitchen with a clay tablet strapped to his chest. He's breathless, sweaty, and clearly not thrilled to be here. He hands the tablet to the cook, who squints at the cuneiform like it personally offended him. 8 more loaves, he mutters. You do not groan because you value your spine, but the urge is there. You're tasked with preparing the loaves for the temple couriers next. The breads are shaped long and flat, like a mix between a pita and a doorstop. Some are pressed with seal impressions, tiny marks that look like stamps, identifying where they're going and who ordered them. It's less home-cooked charm and more ancient barcode. These will be hauled in baskets, tied with reeds, and carried off toward the temple's storage rooms, where offerings, taxes, and political favors all mix together like yesterday's stew. You glance toward the window. The bread delivery boy has just tripped over a dog. Again, that dog may secretly work for a rival kingdom. Mid-morning brings a shift in the air. You catch the scent of something sweeter, richer, more refined. That's when you know it's time for the ceremonial loaves. These aren't like the others. They're shaped into crescents, stars, and twisted spirals, sometimes with decorative seeds or brushed with oil. They're baked with extra care, meant not just to be eaten, but admired, offered, maybe even feared. You help shape one loaf into the form of a fish. The cook nods solemnly. It's for a river spirit. You nod back, because arguing with someone holding a 10-pound paddle is never wise. Historians still debate whether these shaped breads were part of actual religious offerings or symbolic props reused from feast to feast. But based on how closely your supervisor watches you brush olive oil over the fish loaf scales, you're guessing this one's going straight to the divine snack tray. The clay oven is now a full inferno. You feed it wood scraps and dried dung cakes, holding your breath to avoid coughing up half your lungs. A donkey outside brays like he's offended by your technique. You ignore him. You've got half an hour before the priests arrive for their lunch orders, and they do not wait. A young boy tosses a basket of herbs on the table, thyme, mint, a few wilted leaves of something bitter you can't identify. He grins. It's for the priest's purity loaf. You raise an eyebrow. That loaf looks suspiciously like it was made with yesterday's stale dough, hidden under a layer of decorative seeds. He shrugs. Better than what they give the astrologer. Apparently, the astrologer has dietary restrictions based on which planet is in retrograde. Currently, Saturn. You don't ask what that means, you just shape another loaf. Outside, the palace begins to stir louder. Musicians start warming up for some midday ceremony. You hum along as you wrap the loaves in linen cloth and stack them in reed baskets. Everything smells like flour, sweat, and the distant hope of a nap. You know you won't get one, but it's fun to imagine. Just as you're brushing crumbs off your sleeves, one of the guards steps in. He looks hungry, irritated, and mildly impressed that your bread isn't terrible. You hand him a heel. He grunts in approval. You've officially passed the guard test. A cat weaves between your feet, purring like she owns the place. She probably does. The other cook tosses her a bit of crust. She sniffs, sneezes, and walks away like it's beneath her. You sigh. Even the cats have standards here. But you're halfway through your day, elbow deep in dough, and already thinking about the next fire to feed. No time to rest. Lunch is coming, and the barley porridge isn't going to stir itself. You blink, and suddenly it's lunch prep, which means, congratulations, you're behind again. The kitchen has swelled to twice its size in noise and bodies. More cooks, more helpers, more people yelling over things like, whose goat tongue is this? And where's the cumin, like that's a normal thing to scream before noon? Lunch in the palace isn't just one meal. It's 1,000 tiny edible negotiations stacked on bronze trays. Every dish is a statement, a message, a gamble with salt levels and godly approval. Today's featured players: stewed lentils, spiced chickpeas, and roasted goat shoulder that still smells suspiciously like the old storage room. You're assigned to the lentil line. A giant cauldron bubbles with a mixture so thick it could double as mortar if the palace ever needs wall repairs. You stir it with a stick longer than your arm, sweating, squinting, and wondering if it's actually moving or just pretending to out of pity. Into the pot goes chopped onion, garlic, and a generous scoop of something. You sniff it. Ah, ground coriander. Probably. Maybe. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age kitchens used coriander in common dishes or saved it for ritual stews. But today, the head cook says dump it in. So you do. And the lentils thank you by bubbling aggressively like a swamp monster roused too early. The goat meat gets the royal treatment. Well, not royal, but let's say mid-tier noble with delusions of grandeur. It's rubbed with a mix of salt, dried pomegranate peel, and what the assistant insists is crushed locust powder for umami. You don't question it. If it's crunchy and it's been dried, it probably belongs in something. Someone yells about a missing ladle. Another cook drops a jar of pickled garlic. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry, so you do both, silently into the lentils. They absorb your emotions like they do everything else. Out in the courtyard, A runner passes by with a clay tablet and a panicked look. Apparently, a foreign envoy is arriving, and someone forgot to request extra bread. Guess who gets to make 6 more crescent loaves with sacred sesame sprinkled on top? Yeah, you. You steal a handful of the good sesame from the high shelf. It's rare, fragrant, and comes in little sacks marked with a seal. Definitely rationed. But when the cook's back is turned, rationing turns into creative redistribution. Besides, what's one handful in a palace that stores food like it's preparing for the end of the world? The hearth glows hotter now, so you turn the loaves faster. Each one presses against the hot clay wall, bubbles gently, and peels away like a golden disc of edible peacekeeping. You're halfway through when a young assistant pulls you aside. Salt, we're out. You stare out of salt. In this palace, he shrugs. It's locked up. Scribe won't release more unless he gets figs. Of course, figs for salt. You sigh, grab a small pouch, and walk across the complex toward the scribe's chamber, trying not to think about how trading fruit for minerals is somehow your job now. Inside, the scribe is writing ration tallies. He smells like dust and bitter herbs. You offer the figs. He weighs them like they are relics, then nods and hands over a palm-sized clay jar of coarse salt like he's doing you a personal favor. You mutter thanks and hustle back. The lentils get their salt. The goat gets flipped. And you get a splatter of goat fat across your arm and the quiet respect of a nearby kitchen boy whose new and still thinks burns are impressive. You start assembling the lunch trays. Round bronze platters lined with bread, little bowls of stewed pulses, and skewers of roasted onion and pepper. One bowl features fermented yogurt with dill and mint stirred in. Not your favorite, but it smells oddly soothing, like someone tried to trap a meadow in a cup. Another fringe theory you've heard. They used powdered fenugreek in these sauces for extra aroma. Historians aren't sold on that one. Still, you stir it in, just in case. Lunch trays are sorted by rank. Wooden markers identify where each tray goes. The vizier's chamber, the astrologer's table, the captain of the guard, the royal children's tutor. And of course, the offering tray for the gods. You're not supposed to look too closely at that one, but you do. It looks identical to the others, except maybe the bread is a little fluffier. Because, sure, celestial beings probably care about crumb structure. You lift a tray, balanced on your shoulder, and follow the others through the palace corridors. The smells of cumin, roasting meat, and old limestone fill the air. You pass guards polishing their weapons with alarming intensity and scribes arguing about how many figs constitute a proper bribe. Standard lunchtime atmosphere. The vizier gets his food first. You place the tray on a carved wooden stand while he discusses something about camel routes and grain taxes with a merchant whose hat is definitely trying too hard. They don't acknowledge you, which is fine. Better than being yelled at over chickpea texture again. You return just in time for another crisis. A cook has accidentally swapped the astrologer's lentils with the high priest's lentils. Apparently, the priest's dish needed to be meatless due to a holy moon cycle. And the astrologer, he's allergic to onion. You feel like collapsing, but instead, you help fix the plates while mentally screaming into the void. You've got maybe 12 more trays to go. The head cook is barking orders like a general before battle. Everyone's sweating, moving, slapping trays together with all the grace of juggling bricks. The cat from earlier has now taken up residence under the prep table, possibly waiting for the downfall of civilization or just a scrap of goat tendon. And then, just as you're ready to quit, a tray comes back, half-eaten. Someone sends word. The lentils were excellent. You smile, a real smile. Then you blink and get back to stirring, because dinner starts in 4 hours and you've got barley to soak. The sun dips just slightly in the sky, casting long shadows over the courtyard, which means, lucky you, it's time for dinner prep. But don't let the word dinner fool you. This isn't some cozy evening meal with candlelight and violins in the background. This is a logistical stampede dressed in cumin and roasted onions. Dinner at the Bronze Age Syrian palace is more than food. It's diplomacy, worship, showmanship, and occasionally mild poisoning paranoia. You start by hauling out the barley. It's been soaking since mid-morning, swelling like your ankles after a long temple festival. Tonight's porridge will be served 3 ways: plain, salted, and elevated, which, in kitchen speak, means we threw in garlic and hope. You mash the soaked grains with a wooden mallet, rhythmically pounding them into a lumpy mush that smells like a combination of old bread and damp promises. Someone's roasting dates over the fire nearby. The sticky sweet scent floats in the air like some heavenly bribe from the dessert gods. These are meant for the nobles, dates stuffed with crushed pistachio and drizzled with a thick syrup made from boiled grape must. It's like candy, if your dentist also worshipped sun gods and didn't believe in floss. The meat tonight is lamb, carved carefully from the haunch and seasoned with a mix of dried sumac, thyme, and fish brine. Yes, fish brine. Don't ask, it's a thing. The assistant cook says it brings out the brightness. You think it smells like a pawn's opinion. Historians still argue whether these briny sauces were a staple or a luxury imported from coastal regions. Either way, it's all over your hands now. A guest list is carved into a tablet and placed near the prep table. You glance at it and see names. Some you recognize: the head priest, a scribe chief, a Babylonian envoy, and that one merchant who always smells like pine resin. Some names are just symbols, titles too lofty to say aloud. There's even one line that just reads to be decided. You hope that's not referring to the goat liver stew. There's a buzz in the air, not from flies, though they are definitely here, and throwing a rave on the fruit platter. It's the kitchen gossip about tonight's performance. A harpist, a dancer, and possibly a ritual reenactment involving someone pretending to be a bull. Again. You stir a pot of lentils and wonder why the bull always gets blamed. Historians still debate whether these performances had religious meaning or were just elite dinner entertainment with a side of awkward bleeding. You're put on olive duty. This sounds fun until you realize it involves sorting the green ones from the black ones and checking each for worms. Worms love olives almost as much as the priest does. You find 3. They get tossed to the cat, who accepts them as tribute and promptly bats one into a corner like it insulted her lineage. Now comes plating. Each dish is arranged with an obsessive flair. Barley gets shaped into small domes. Lamb is sliced into thin strips and draped over grilled flatbread. Fruits are fanned out like a ceremonial offering. Even the vegetables get stacked like they're auditioning for a food sculpture competition. You're responsible for the tray going to the queen's cousin, the one who always asks for extra mint and less staring. You sprinkle the mint and avoid eye contact with the plate. It's better that way. As the head cook checks trays, he mutters complaints like blessings. Too much onion. Who arranged this fig like that? Is this goat tongue or someone's mistake? You pretend not to hear and keep slicing cucumbers into delicate little fans, even though you're pretty sure no one has ever said. You know what made that feast memorable? The cucumber geometry. You get a surprise assignment. Take food to the temple's inner gate, where the high priest's assistant waits with his usual mix of impatience and questionable sandals. You load the tray. A soft emmer loaf, a scoop of lamb, barley with wild leeks, and a clay cup of beer, so strong it could probably run a chariot. You carry it through the hallways, stepping over 2 dogs, one unconscious flute player, and a chicken that does not belong here. At the gate, the assistant grabs the tray like you're 5 minutes late, even though you're actually early. He gives you a nod that somehow still feels like an insult. You walk back, muttering about how sandals should be banned in temple rolls. You round a corner and nearly bump into the palace steward himself. He doesn't see you because he's arguing about fish sauce import quotas. You quietly back away and pretend to study a wall. By the time you return, someone's knocked over the jug of wine for the vizier's table. You know this because the kitchen floor is now red and everyone's swearing in very quiet, terrified voices. A boy runs out to fetch another amphora. You mop the floor with the same cloth someone just used to polish a cheese wheel. Multitasking. As evening creeps in, the kitchen begins to quiet. Most trays are gone. The hearth still glows, but the worst is over. You nibble on a leftover chickpea ball and almost taste peace. It lasts 7 seconds. A runner stumbles in. New orders. The astrologer wants a second helping, but without the bad barley this time. You don't know what that means, but you scrape together the fluffiest batch you can find and spoon it into a polished bowl with a sprig of coriander. Because presentation can trick the stars. Maybe you find a moment to sit near the window. The night air filters in. Cool, slightly damp, and full of smoke from 10,000 fires across the city. You look at the sky, stars slowly waking up while the cat curls next to your leg like you're finally worth sitting near. In the distance, the sounds of the feast drift on the wind. Laughter, harp strings, clapping, the thud of something breaking, hopefully not bones. Your part is nearly done. But first, it's your turn to clean the cooking blades and soak the bread molds for tomorrow. The palace doesn't rest, but for a moment you do. And that moment tastes faintly of mint, lamb fat, and satisfaction. You're barely off your feet before someone shouts about the beer jugs being out of balance, which is just kitchen code for someone drank what they shouldn't. You sigh, because tonight, apparently, you're also the inventory police. You shuffle toward the back storage chamber, where the good beer, fermented in tall-necked clay amphorae and sealed with wax and reeds, sits beside baskets of dried legumes and jars of imported honey that no one admits to opening, but mysteriously keep getting lighter. The beer tally is off by 3 full measures. You try not to point fingers, but you're 89% sure it's the sandal-wearing priest assistant again. He always smells like he's been tasting, for ceremonial reasons. You mark it in the wax tablet ledger and leave a passive-aggressive note that says, "Offerings are not appetizers." No one will care, but you feel marginally better. As you shuffle back through the kitchen corridor, your feet stick to the floor in places. It's the honey again. Someone spilled a whole jar near the lentil sacks and only half cleaned it. Now it's an ant carnival. You step around the biggest cluster and swear one of the ants is carrying a lentil like a tiny soldier going to war. Back in the main kitchen, the brazier is being prepped for post-dinner digestives. That means heating little clay mugs of spiced beer and warm goat's milk with herbs. Some say it settles the stomach. You suspect it just helps everyone sleep through the stomachache. Historians still argue whether this late-night brew had medicinal properties or was just a sleepy time placebo with good PR. You take a mug over to the guards at the outer courtyard gate. They get the leftovers, but tonight they are lucky. It's still warm and has a generous dash of cardamom. One of the guards offers you a bite of his smoked eel jerky. You politely decline. He insists. You take it. It's chewy, salty, and surprisingly sweet. You make a face. He nods, clearly proud. You try not to gag too obviously. Your route back takes you past the laundry section, where the linen aprons used in food service are being rinsed out in giant vats. The women doing the washing are laughing about a priest who spilled pomegranate sauce on himself during a blessing. They reenact it with flair. You laugh too. The palace may be a bureaucratic beast, but the laundry crew's sense of humor could bring down empires. You spot the kitchen cat again, this time attempting to murder a date-stuffed fig. It's a good fight. You pause to watch. She wins, barely. The fig is demolished. You give her a victorious nod. She ignores you. Classic. In the grain room, a scribe is doing a surprise audit. His wax tablet is covered in little scratches, tallying out barley measures, spelt allocations, and something labeled emergency pea mush. You don't ask. He looks bored out of his mind. You help him lift a sack of grain, and he thanks you with all the enthusiasm of a goat watching paint dry. Historians still debate whether these scribes had any real power in the kitchen or were just glorified food accountants. Suddenly, a junior cook rushes in with wild eyes and a minor emergency. The queen's cousin didn't like the way her lamb was sliced. You blink. You're not in charge of slicing. Doesn't matter. Now it's your problem. You get handed a tray and are told to make it feel more noble. So you reslice the lamb with unnecessarily decorative diagonal cuts and sprinkle an extra pinch of dried rose petals on top. Boom, nobility in a bowl. The night cools further, and a breeze sneaks through the half-open vents. You finally stop moving for more than 2 minutes. You lean against a cool stone wall and sip from your own mug of leftover barley brew. It's warm, flat, and tastes like regret and cinnamon, but it's yours. One of the bakers ambles in. He's been napping under the bread ovens again. He stretches and offers you a leftover fig loaf. It's dense, sticky, and full of seeds. You chew it like you mean it, even as your jaw begins filing complaints. He tells you a rumor. Someone saw a scorpion in the grain baskets this morning. You try not to choke on a fig seed. The kitchen's quiet now, except for the pop of embers and a low humming from someone rearranging clay dishes by song rhythm. You take the moment to sweep near the cold hearth. You uncover 3 rogue olives, 1 button, whose tunic? No one knows, and a wooden spoon that clearly lost a fight with fire. You glance toward the courtyard where tonight's feast has finally ended. Servants are collecting empty trays. The dancer with the golden bangles walks by, barefoot, skin shining with oil and dust. She smells faintly of myrrh. You both nod. No words exchanged, just the shared exhaustion of performing for someone else's glory. You carry the cracked jug of wine to the trash pit. Yes, trash existed. It's more of a compost mound mixed with broken pottery and shame. You drop it in and notice someone already tossed out half a tray of untouched lentils. You consider fishing it out. You do not. That's growth. The sky's Inkai now. The last of the torches are being extinguished. A bell chimes from the temple tower, final offering done. Time to close up. You wipe down the stone counters, stack the clean cups, and check that the kitchen door is barred from the inside. No more wandering priests looking for midnight snacks. You put away the cutting blades in their cedar box, the one with the faded carving of a lion licking a fish. You don't know what it means. No one does. Maybe it's just kitchen branding. As you gather your apron to leave, you find a sprig of coriander in your pocket. You stare at it for a long second. Did someone tuck this here as a joke? Or is this coriander now your responsibility forever? You don't know. But you tuck it into a small crack in the kitchen wall like it's a secret. Let it grow. Maybe. And as your feet crunch the last of the barley husks on the floor, you feel something strange. Not hunger, not tiredness, not even annoyance at the whole lamb-slicing debacle. Just a little bit of pride. This kitchen, this chaotic, aromatic, occasionally scorpion-infested kitchen, ran like a dream tonight. Because of you, because of all of you. And tomorrow, well, tomorrow you do it all again. Morning starts before the sun even thinks about stretching. You're already up, feet aching from yesterday's saga of lentil tragedies and drunken priest drama, and your first thought is, did I soak the chickpeas? You did not. Congratulations. Today's hummus is canceled or, at best, going to involve a lot of squinting and lying. The kitchen is quiet in that eerie, don't wake the gods sort of way. Cool stone presses against your soles as you slip through the inner passage, passing a snoring guard, and the faint smell of burnt milk from someone's forgotten midnight mug. A small lamp flickers in the prep chamber. It's that teenage apprentice again, the one who insists on rearranging the spice jars by vibe instead of label. Today, Fennel is feeling left of cumin. You nod like that makes sense. You're too tired to fight this early in the day. Your job this morning is grain. Not glamorous, but essential. Without you, this place runs on empty stomachs and revolution. You lift the woven basket lids, releasing a warm, earthy scent of spelt, barley, and emmer. And surprise, there's the scorpion someone swore they saw yesterday. It scuttles across the barley like it pays rent. You stare it down. It stares back. You reach for a clay bowl and gently shoo it into exile. You are now officially a scorpion whisperer. As the rest of the kitchen crew trickles in, still yawning and dragging their feet like resurrected clay statues, the clatter begins. Copper pans meet stone counters. Spoons scrape bowls. Someone sneezes directly into a basket of onions. You'll pretend you didn't see it. Today's breakfast assignment includes porridge for servants, date and butter flatbread for elite guests, and a ceremonial first light loaf for the high priest, because apparently he cannot speak to the divine without a bite of honeyed wheat. Historians still argue whether this was true ritual or a cleverly disguised snack break. You boil the grain in a large ceramic pot, watching the starchy bubbles slowly rise and pop like sleepy lava. Someone drops a fig into your porridge. You glare. They shrug. It's a figgy kind of day, apparently. You move on to kneading dough, your fingers sticky with barley paste and your forearms doing most of the work. The dough is dense. It smells of sweat, yeast, and desperation. You roll it out into thin discs and toss them onto the hot, griddle stones laid over the brazier. The stones hiss. The bread sizzles. Some bubbles up like it's trying to escape its own destiny. You flip it anyway. In the back chamber, the meat has arrived. 2 goats, 3 ducks, and because the stars are mocking you, a whole antelope delivered with the note. Cook for diplomatic meal, must look majestic. You're not even sure what majestic antelope tastes like. Probably nervous. You oversee the butchering. It's not your favorite task, but someone has to make sure the liver goes to the scribes, who, rumor has it, believe it helps them calculate tax records better. No one knows if it's true. They just like saying, "Give me the liver," like it's a dramatic line from a palace soap opera. You instruct the apprentice to save the antelope shank, for roasting, the ribs for stew, and the tongue. Well, maybe for bribing the guards. One of them owes you a favor. Tongue favors are a known currency around here. The smell of roasted onions hits you hard. Someone has taken initiative. You smile. Then you see that they forgot to peel them. You unsmile. You peel the onions mid-roast, crying not from emotion but from sulfuric betrayal. Next up, eggs. You count them carefully. Duck, goose, and a few quail. The quail eggs are for the queen's breakfast, served on a silver dish with a drizzle of garlic vinegar. You boil them, time them by the length of a morning prayer, and pray harder that she doesn't notice one is slightly over. A whisper reaches you from the courtyard. The priestess wants her morning pomegranate juice strained 3 times, because the gods notice pulp. You resist the urge to scream. Instead, you strain that juice so hard it contemplates becoming wine. The spice master, yes, that's his self-declared title, arrives late and swears that last night's dreams offered cumin placement guidance. You just ask him to pass the coriander. He does so with flair, sprinkling it from a ridiculous height like he's summoning flavor from heaven. You pretend to be impressed. He lives for this. There's a quiet lull mid-morning. You take it. You sit by the back wall, sipping barley water and chewing on a strip of dried apricot. The air is warm but not yet heavy. Smoke curls from the brazier in lazy spirals. Someone is humming a lullaby meant for goats. You hum along. You don't know why. It feels right. You peek out toward the guest courtyard where today's diplomats are arriving. They wear robes dyed with crushed snails and walk like every step is a poem. They'll expect feasts later, and their servants will come poking around the kitchen with impossible questions like, do you serve swan eggs stuffed with garlic mousse? You do not. You barely serve reality. The head steward rushes in and hands you a last-minute order. 3 trays of barley cakes with sweet melon paste. You blink. You haven't even cut the melons. You grab the apprentice. You slice, smash, mix, and press. You form cakes so fast your palms leave dents like ceremonial stamps. They're warm, fragrant, slightly uneven. Perfect. You dust them with poppy seeds and whisper a prayer to the god of improvisation. Finally, the fire dies down. The pans are scraped clean. The last batch of flatbread is cooling near the window where the cat has decided to nap on 2 of them. You let her. She's earned it. You mop your brow with the corner of your apron, which now smells like duck grease and melon sugar. You squint at the kitchen ledgers. Someone forgot to log the eggs. Again, you scribble it in. Add a doodle of a goose for dramatic effect. Another bell rings. You sigh. It's the midday bell. Only 6 more hours to go. Time for lunch prep. Better check on the antelope tongue. Lunch isn't just a meal. It's theater with knives. And today, your stage smells like garlic, sweat, and roasting antelope. You stand at the center of it all, arms crossed, flour on your cheek, daring the universe to throw another culinary curveball. Spoiler alert, it does. As midday light slants through the lattice windows, beams catching on floating flour dust like lazy magic, the palace is already vibrating with anticipation. The diplomats have finished their ceremonial goat blessing. The queen has completed her moon-watching prayers. The scribes have officially run out of excuses to skip eating. So now they all want lunch, and not just anything. A multi-course, spice-laden, texture-balanced, divine-invoking lunch. With roasted meats, spiced grains, pickled vegetables, and sauces so complex even the kitchen gods blink twice. You check your prep tables. One is dedicated to meat, sizzling duck legs, charred goat riblets, and that antelope shank, now roasted to a crisp bronze and smelling like triumph. The next table is grains, fricassee with pine nuts, bulgur with dates, and a new experiment involving crushed chickpeas, lemon, and what might be fermented yogurt if you squint. And a third table, your favorite, is the sauces and garnishes. Pomegranate molasses, garlic oil infused with fennel seeds, and a dipping paste so spicy it has its own warning chant. You oversee plating. Everything must look deliberate. Even the things you threw together in a sleep-deprived panic. A duck leg gets perched atop fricassee with 1 pomegranate seed too many. You pick it off. Balance is everything. Someone drops a bowl of pickled onions. It shatters. They freeze, expecting fury. You just sigh and hand them another. You've seen worse. Like that time the head priest choked on an olive pit and insisted it was divine punishment. Historians still argue whether he exaggerated to get out of his speech that day. In the background, musicians begin their tuning. Strings twang. Drums thump like impatient stomachs, because lunch isn't just eaten, it's performed. The nobles dine in an open hall with ceramic wind chimes swaying in the breeze. Food is served in waves. Each dish has its moment under the metaphorical spotlight. You send out the first tray, roasted duck with plum glaze, carried by a boy so nervous he's holding his breath. You gently remind him to inhale or he'll pass out into the stew. He nods, immediately forgets. You watch him go. A hero, or at least a brave fork-bearer. Next, the stews. Goat and barley, thickened with ground lentils and crowned with sour yogurt and wild mint. It smells like a warm hug from a parent who's also a little judgmental. The nobles will love it. unless they don't. In which case, they'll love the grilled melon skewers dipped in honey instead. One of your assistants has made decorative bread loaves shaped like ibex horns. They're slightly uneven, but still charming. You arrange them on a carved cedar platter. It smells like both breakfast and forest. You tell the assistant they did well. They look like they might cry. You distract them by asking for more honey. A runner dashes in with a note from the priestess. Less garlic in the queen's food. Too late. The queen is already chewing. You pause, wait. She smiles, shrugs, keeps eating. Disaster narrowly averted. Garlic wins again. You notice a peculiar tray among the outgoing dishes. A slice of goat cheese wrapped in grape leaves, served atop a bed of dried locusts. You squint. No one remembers making this. Turns out the spice master had a vision in the bathhouse and ran with it. You shake your head. He's lucky the nobles are too polite to ask questions with their mouths full. The scribes eat last. Not because they are less important, but because they like to observe everyone else first. They say it helps them divine the mood of the court. You think they just like their food hot. They get the leftovers, slightly reassembled to look new. A trick you mastered years ago. Add a garnish, change the bowl, rebrand it as a chef's second blessing. They'll write sonnets about it. There's a hush in the kitchen, a rare moment. You lean against the wall and bite into a scrap of duck skin. Crunchy, sweet, a little salty, it's a victory bite. You earned it. You glance at the slate board tracking ingredients. Someone's drawn a doodle of you as a grain god with lentil eyebrows. You chuckle. Then realize it's disturbingly accurate. You erase the eyebrows, leave the rest. Out in the courtyard, a noble is loudly praising the spice blend on their fricassee. You beam. Then freeze. You didn't put any spices on that batch. The apprentice did. You eye them suspiciously. They grin. They might actually be good at this, or very lucky. You decide to test them tomorrow with the royal vinegar shelf. A true trial. In the distance, the high priest stands to give thanks. He gestures toward the food and declares that the gods are pleased. A beetle lands on his head mid-speech. No one says anything. That's lunch theater for you. Big declarations, bigger insects. With the meal wrapping up, trays are returned. Some licked clean, others with bite marks you'd rather not analyze. The dishwashing team groans. You send them a reward, small sweet cakes filled with date paste and black sesame. Sugar for morale, sugar for silence. You make a note of what worked. What vanished fastest? What earned a whispered compliment from the royal cousins? Not because you care about praise, but because inventory's tight. And if melon paste is in vogue, you need to double it by next week or risk civil discontent. You check the storage. Barley, half a bin. Figs, good supply. Coriander, running low. Antelope, thankfully rare. You mentally plan tomorrow's menu as you wipe your hands on a rag that used to be white. Now it's kitchen-colored. A blend of sauces, sweat, and small victories. As the last pot is scrubbed and the kitchen begins its brief exhale, you hear a distant bell. Afternoon snack time. You close your eyes, breathe deeply. You mutter, "Let the gods eat air." But of course, you're already reaching for the honey. The sun slouches toward the western horizon, and in the golden lull between lunch and dinner, the palace demands a snack. Not just any snack, mind you. Something sweet, perhaps, maybe salty, definitely elaborate. Because no matter the hour, palace appetites don't nap. You barely catch a breath before a runner appears, panting like a desert lizard, clutching a linen scroll with sticky fingers. Afternoon refreshment. It reads in looping calligraphy, for the scribes, priestesses, and all those who think too hard. You squint. That's half the palace, and most of them are picky. You clap your hands. The team groans. Except for one bright-eyed teen who seems dangerously enthusiastic about boiling syrup. They'll learn. Oh, they'll learn. Today's snack menu involves 3 key pillars: crunch, chew, and chill. For crunch, you decide on pistachio brittle, sugar boiled until it threatens to rebel. then poured over toasted nuts and left to harden into edible armor. It's great for cracking teeth and egos. For Chu, a tray of honeyed barley cakes, rolled with dried apricots and dusted with ground rose petals. Romantic, right? Until you remember rose petals attract bees. There's already one buzzing near your eyebrow. It wants your soul. And for chill, you prep a cool yogurt dip laced with mint, cucumber, and a hint of fermented fig. Served in stone cups nestled in damp sand to stay cool. Primitive refrigeration. Delicious results. You test it with a date cake. It shouldn't work. It does. You pretend it was intentional. Someone suggests a fruit compote. You nod sagely and mutter, yes, of course, the compote of renewal. No one knows what that means, but it sounds official. You dice figs, plums, and melon, drizzle them with honey wine, and garnish with a single clove. Cloves are rare, but this snack's for thinkers. They'll notice. They'll write about it in their scrolls, maybe even give it a poetic name like Syrup of Enlightenment. While the sweets bubble and set, you wander to the spice cabinet. A curious bottle labeled Red Smoke. You sniff. Cinnamon mixed with something. Odd. The spice master says it's dried pomegranate peels smoked over cedar. You shrug and toss a pinch into the compote. Historians still argue whether this particular mix was used for flavor or ritual cleansing. You decide it's both. Out in the courtyard, the philosophers and priests are already reclining on cushions, discussing the moral weight of fig pits and the alignment of barley with Jupiter. You stifle a giggle. They think they are subtle, but they've arranged themselves closest to where the food trays will be delivered. Some scholars are strategic, others are just hungry. The snack cart rolls out. An old wheel squeaks like an offended goat. You add oil. It squeaks louder. You glare. It quiets. Victory. The priestesses receive their mint cups and barley cakes with dainty nods. One immediately dips her cake into the yogurt. Bold move. She chews thoughtfully, then makes the holy gesture of approval, 3 fingers to the forehead, chest, and stomach. That's ancient Syrian for dang, that's good. You pause at the scribe table. They've already arranged a little rankings board for the afternoon treats. Last week's candied olives sit in second place. Today's pistachio brittle shoots straight to the top. You're not supposed to care, but you do. Scribes have long memories, so do brittle fans. One old poet starts reciting a verse about the crackling golden slab that whispers of almonds and thunder. You suspect he's just showing off, but you hand him an extra piece anyway. Everyone likes a snack bard. In the shade of a pillar, a debate breaks out about whether dried melon strips count as fruit or candy. A priest votes fruit. A philosopher votes candy. You vote both, then eat one in front of them just to end the argument. Everyone agrees. You win. Again. Meanwhile, the kitchen simmers in the background. Someone's chopping cucumbers like they've got unresolved drama. Someone else is humming a hymn that suspiciously resembles a drinking song. A goat pokes its head in. Just one, you point. It leaves. A smart goat. One of the younger assistants brings you a tray of what they call honey wafers. Thin sheets of baked dough stacked with syrup and nuts. They're sticky. They're beautiful. They're slightly crooked. You raise an eyebrow, the assistant shrinks. Then you take a bite. It crunches, oozes, and sings. You nod slowly. Fix the shape, keep the soul. Later, you find a quiet moment beside the fire pit. You're holding a cup of barley water, watching the sun smudge into the horizon. The golden hour is glowing. Everything smells like baked grain and syrup smoke. You stretch your back, hear a pop. Might have been divine, might have been your spine. You reflect on the menu. 3 days ago, the queen demanded sweet chickpeas shaped like lions. Today, she's all about yogurt and melon. Tomorrow could be fermented garlic mousse with pomegranate pearls, or mud pies with celestial approval. Who knows? You keep a scroll of weird requests just for laughs. Top entry. Make barley look seductive. Still working on that one. A junior priest approaches shyly and asks what's in the compote. You smile, say nothing, let them wonder. Mystery is the final ingredient. You gather the empty trays, some are licked clean. Some have polite crumbs, you even find one bowl with a tiny clay figurine inside. A child's prank, a secret offering, you decide it's both, you keep it. Name it Sir Snack-a-Lot. As evening closes in, you glance toward the dining hall. Dinner is already looming. But for now, the palace is content. Bellies full, minds busy. Even the goat is dozing. You smile. Snack time, survived, barely, sweetly. Dinner doesn't arrive, it descends, like a royal storm with golden plates and too many opinions. You feel it in your bones before you hear the clatter of brass bowls and the shrill shriek of a food taster discovering a stray apricot in the lamb stew. Dinner in the Bronze Age palace is not a meal, it's a performance. And tonight's stage is the Great Hall. You brace yourself. Your tunic still smells faintly of honey wafers, and someone smeared yogurt on the corner of your recipe scroll. You sigh. It begins again. The Queen's evening preferences arrive on a palm leaf tablet. You squint at the cursive Akkadian. Something about lamb hearts, coriander, and no detectable cumin. You mutter under your breath. She's still convinced cumin causes strange dreams. Historians still argue whether that was superstition or a very niche allergy. You snap your fingers. The kitchen crew forms up like a sleepy infantry. Someone's got a pot of chickpeas going. Someone else is weeping softly over leeks. A third is wrestling with a sack of carob flour like it insulted his mother. You direct them all with gentle, iron will. Dinner must be grand. Dinner must impress. Dinner must not, under any circumstances, include raisins. The king has a vendetta. You begin with the centerpiece. Slow-roasted lamb soaked in date wine, stuffed with leeks, crushed coriander, and a single pearl onion per royal tooth. You stitch the lamb shut with a sliver of bronze. You mutter a kitchen prayer. You may not believe, but bronze is expensive. Beside that, a stew of lentils and barley simmers in a clay pot wide enough to hide a scandal. You toss in garlic, wild celery, and a ladle of last week's beef broth, aged just long enough to make your eyebrows twitch. Flavor is risk. Risk is respect. Vegetables next. A platter of grilled eggplant, squash, and tiny green peppers that look innocent but taste like vengeance. You warn the servers. They ignore you. You write hot in fish sauce on the platter. They still ignore you. One will cry later. Justice will be swift and tongue-based. The Queen's attendants pass by with their trademark sniffing faces. One whispers, "No visible bones tonight, please." You whisper back, "No visible attitudes either." They blink, you smile, diplomacy. A junior cook proudly presents his idea, turnip roses. He's carved turnips into floral shapes and dyed them with beetroot. You raise an eyebrow, they're gorgeous. You hate how much you like them. You approve. He faints. You step over him. No time. Grain is sacred, so the evening porridge must sing. Tonight's version includes crushed pistachios, sheep's milk, and a swirl of black honey drawn into the shape of a goddess spiral. You tried drawing a camel once. It looked like regret. Stick with spirals. Bread arrives in waves, flatbreads, rounds, crisped barley discs, and something vaguely shaped like a fish. It's not supposed to be a fish. You ignore it. The breadmaster slaps it from the tray. You nod. Teamwork. Wine flows. Not the cheap daytime wine. Tonight it's aged pomegranate fig blend, stored in sealed amphorae under priestly watch. You uncork one. A whisper of ancient fruit escapes. You imagine someone 3,000 years from now sniffing the dust of that same amphora and wondering what dinner tasted like in your world. You shrug, mostly lamb and sarcasm. Meanwhile, the servers rehearse the procession. Yes, rehearse. Every step, from tray lifting to synchronized bowing. They even practice looking humble. Some of them are naturals. Others look like they just smelled bad lentils. As the sun fully bows out, the torches are lit. Long shadows flicker across the stone walls. Drums begin in the distance. Not for war, just ambience, dinner ambience. Because nothing says enjoy your barley like a 7-piece percussion ensemble. The king arrives first, always does. He doesn't like to wait or be second. He sits on a cushion embroidered with tiny bowls. His beard is freshly oiled. His stomach is already growling. You give the signal. Dinner flows from the kitchen in a staggered cascade. Steam, spice, and startled servers. The lamb makes its entrance like a conquering hero. The porridge gets polite applause. The turnip roses earn an audible gasp. You make a mental note. Promote turnip boy. One scholar mumbles that the porridge spiral resembles the moon goddess Inanna. A priest whispers that it's actually the fertility sign of Tammuz. A scribe quietly sketches both. Historians still argue whether these symbols were food decoration, ritual sigils, or just chefs showing off. You know the answer. Yes, then comes the queen. She glides in with the confidence of someone who has never chopped an onion. Her robe glitters. Her sandals match her amulets. Her eyes scan the table with surgical precision. You hold your breath. She picks up a grilled pepper, sniffs, takes a bite, pauses, and says, "Perfect heat." You exhale so hard your assistant thinks you're deflating. You pat their shoulder. We live another night. Dinner continues. Laughter, chewing, the occasional scream from someone who bit a pepper wrong. The king tells a story about defeating a scorpion the size of a dog. The queen counters with a tale about a cursed mirror that made her eyebrows fall out for a week. You pour yourself a tiny cup of wine. You've earned it. In the corner, a dancer begins to twirl. Not part of your department, but you support the arts, and she's holding a skewer of lamb, so technically still culinary. You watch the trays empty, the guests sigh, and the tension ease. Dinner is a victory, not loud, not flashy, but you survived. Your team survived. Even the bread didn't burn, miracles happen, you step outside. The night air is cooler now. Stars blink above like sleepy gods. You smell ash, honey, meat, and jasmine. You stretch. Your knees crack. You smile. One last thought before bed. What if tomorrow's dinner is raw fish rolled in herbs? Or pigeon eggs filled with fig paste? Or pickled camel tongue? You shrug. Whatever it is, you'll cook it. Probably. Or fake it with confidence. The night deepens, and with it, the quiet hum of the palace kitchen shifts from frenzy to gentle vigilance. You are no longer the commander of chaos, but the guardian of leftovers and whispered secrets. There's a strange peace in cleaning up after hundreds have eaten. The scraping of bowls, the rustle of linens, the faint clink of spoons abandoned like tiny trophies. You trudge through the remains, eyes half closed, nose filled with lingering scents of cumin and charred barley. Tomorrow's menu is already a ghost in your mind, but for now, you exist in this soft, sticky limbo. You bend to gather the day's scraps and discard them carefully into the courtyard compost heap, a mini mountain of bones, husks, and spoiled figs. Someone jokes that the heap is a palace's version of the underworld, a dark kingdom ruled by the gods of decay. You laugh quietly, imagining a tiny god with a fork and a judging glare. Historians still argue whether palace compost heaps were managed with ritual respect or just ignored until they overflowed. You suspect a bit of both. The slaves and kitchen hands start their rounds, washing pots in cold well water and stacking earthenware with the precision of temple scribes. You catch one of the apprentices whispering a recipe to a mouse, a secret pact between pest and cook. Perhaps. You shake your head with a smile. Only in this palace could even the mice be gourmet spies. A soft murmur floats from the nearby wine cellar. The cellar master is sampling a batch of date wine, swirling it in a clay cup like it's liquid gold. You remember a rumor that some vintages were aged with herbs to calm the gods, or maybe just the hangovers. The debate still puzzles scholars, divine intervention or clever chemistry. You decide you don't want to know which one, especially after that last cup at dinner. Outside, the guards on night watch pass by, their footsteps muffled by sand and stone. You consider slipping out to the palace gardens, where jasmine vines curl like sleepy serpents and night-blooming flowers release perfume thick as honey. It's the kind of place you'd want if you were a restless spirit or a tired cook in need of silence. The gardens are rumored to be haunted by ancestral cooks who vanished after botching a royal feast. You glance over your shoulder, just in case, and no ghosts tonight, only the soft croak of frogs and the distant barking of a dog dreaming about roasted lamb. Back inside, you gather the last few ingredients: salt, dried mint, crushed coriander, and store them in clay jars sealed with beeswax. You check the spice cabinet, making mental notes of what's low. Cumin, suspiciously absent from tonight's dinner, is running dangerously short. You joke that the cumin shortage is probably a conspiracy by the king's enemies, or maybe just a cosmic prank. Either way, tomorrow's stew might be less spicy and more suspicious. Your fingers brush over a small bowl of leftover honey wafers, the ones you praised earlier. You resist the urge to steal one. Discipline is your secret weapon, mostly because you can't afford a stomachache tonight. As you settle in your corner of the kitchen, a scribe appears with a worn tablet covered in notes. He's been documenting the day's meals, rituals, and gossip with equal passion. You watch as he adds a little flourish next to the honey cakes, something that looks suspiciously like a smiley face. You nudge him. He grins. Even scribes need a bit of humor. The apprentice brings a final gift, a small clay figurine of a chicken painted in bright ochre. For good luck, they say, eyes shining. You thank them and place it by the door. In this palace, even luck needs a little art. You lean back and exhale deeply. The day's heat fades, replaced by a cool night breeze carrying whispers of cinnamon and cardamom. The kitchen, usually so loud and frantic, hums with the contented sighs of a job well done. You close your eyes for a moment, thinking about the palace tomorrow. The new demands, the endless challenges, the endless food. You smile. Because if anyone can tame the chaos of a Bronze Age palace kitchen, it's you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll sneak a honey wafer before dawn. The dawn creeps in like a shy guest, softening the palace's hard edges with pale gold. You're already awake, naturally, since the kitchen waits for no one, especially not you. The aroma of fresh bread baking in the stone ovens drifts through the corridors, curling around your nose and tugging at your belly. You shuffle toward the kitchen's heart, the baking chamber, where dough rises like quiet promises beneath linen covers. There's a sacred ritual in this: kneading, shaping, scoring. Each loaf a tiny masterpiece destined to fuel kings and courtiers. Historians still argue whether the palace bakers used yeast cultivated from wild grapes or relied on sourdough starters passed down like royal secrets. You think it might have been a little of both, with a dash of stubborn guesswork. You poke a finger into a warm mound of dough, feeling the air bubbles like captured laughter. A baker grunts approval, wiping flour-dusted hands on a leather apron. You exchange a tired smile. Baking isn't glamorous, but it's a cornerstone. Without bread, the banquet is just a sad gathering of empty plates and grumbling stomachs. Near the fire, a pot simmers with a mysterious paste you recognize as the palace's signature garlic and onion sauce. It smells like victory and bad breath in equal measure. You scoop some and taste it carefully, wincing just a little. The apprentice is watching. You assure them it's an acquired flavor. They nod enthusiastically, probably lying. Outside the kitchen, the palace staff begin to stir. The king's personal attendants polish bronze goblets until they gleam like captured sunlight. The queen's ladies prepare fragrant oils and makeup, their chatter a soft counterpoint to the kitchen's clamor. You imagine them all thinking, "At least we don't have to chop onions." You smirk and remind yourself the cooks get to eat the scraps. It's a fair trade. A messenger arrives with a fresh order from the royal scribes. Add pomegranate seeds to the morning porridge and double the honey. You blink. Pomegranates are precious, like liquid rubies. You wonder if the scribes want to sweeten the mood or just prove they can be demanding too. Historians still argue whether these scribble requests reflected actual royal tastes or just power plays in palace politics. You decide it's probably a little of both, and definitely not your problem. As you stir the porridge, you remember an odd detail from the palace's dietary texts. A note about crocodile dung used in an ancient sunscreen recipe. You chuckle quietly. Probably not the most delicious ingredient for dinner, but effective sun protection might have been worth the risk. You wonder if anyone tried using that sunscreen on roasted lamb. The thought makes you shudder. The kitchen's rhythm quickens as more dishes take shape. Barley cakes, stewed figs, and a brightly spiced lamb ragout that smells like an exotic market on festival day. You plate the food carefully, knowing the morning meal sets the tone for the whole day. The king hates surprises at breakfast. You respect that. Outside, the palace courtyard bursts into life with laughter and the clatter of sandals on stone. Children of the nobility chase chickens and chase secrets, their voices ringing like bells. You think about the simple joys outside your kitchen walls: fresh air, sunshine, freedom. And then remind yourself that here, in this stew-scented domain, you hold power of a different sort. You are the master of flavor, the keeper of the king's appetite, the unseen hero of countless days. The queen's steward arrives, eyes sharp and expectant. She tastes a spoonful of the porridge and nods once sharply. Perfect balance. You almost bow, almost. The morning meal is served with quiet ceremony, plates passing through hands like precious gifts. You watch the king scoop porridge carefully, a rare look of contentment on his face. You think about all the effort, the spices, the ancient wisdom folded into this simple bowl. It's a victory, quiet and sweet. Later, as the palace begins its daily routines, you catch a moment to sneak a piece of bread, slathered in honey and sprinkled with crushed pistachios. It's the taste of success. You savor it slowly. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new flavors, new battles with stubborn cooks and picky nobles. But for now, the morning is yours. You breathe deeply, feeling the steady pulse of the palace around you, and know you are exactly where you belong. The palace's midday sun burns high and fierce, but inside the kitchen, it feels like a slow, simmering heartbeat. You move carefully now, balancing between the demands of midday meals and the quiet moments when the kitchen seems to catch its breath. The fire pits blaze hotter, sending a shimmer of heat through the stone corridors. You wipe a bead of sweat from your brow and glance at the enormous jars of olive oil and sesame paste lined up like soldiers ready for battle. Midday is the kitchen's peak challenge, feeding not just the royal family, but all their attendants, soldiers, and guests who flood the palace halls. Historians still argue whether these meals were simple or lavish. Some texts suggest more bread and stew. Others describe elaborate banquets with dozens of dishes. You suspect the truth lies somewhere between feed everyone and show off a little. The scent of fresh herbs, mint, coriander, and a pinch of wild thyme mingles with the rich smell of roasting lamb, sizzling in a bronze pan over an open flame. You pause to breathe it in, knowing this will be the centerpiece of today's midday feast. An apprentice scurries by, nearly tripping over a basket of freshly harvested chickpeas and lentils. You catch it just in time, thinking how clumsy enthusiasm is both adorable and potentially catastrophic. Nearby, a group of kitchen hands are busy preparing a large platter of stuffed grape leaves. each one carefully rolled and sealed with practiced fingers. The recipe's origin is a mystery. Some say it came from the mountains. Others claim it was invented right here in the palace kitchens. The debate continues in scholarly circles, but you just know that it tastes like sunshine wrapped in a leaf. The palace scribe approaches with his tablet, looking a bit harried. He's been jotting down new requests from the royal family, more pomegranates, a hint of saffron, and a note about the king's particular fondness for a sweet wine from the east. You wonder how many of these scribes actually taste the food, or if they just enjoy the power of ordering things around. It's a question historians still wrestle with, whether scribes were mere bureaucrats or secret gourmets in disguise. You think they were probably a bit of both, much like everyone else in the palace. In the corner, a curious ritual unfolds. A cook carefully sprinkles powdered lapis lazuli into a batch of festival cakes, aiming to give them a shimmering blue tint. It's a bizarre tradition, you know, but apparently the royal family believes that the vibrant color pleases the gods and the eyes equally. You've heard whispers that ingesting lapis might not be the healthiest choice, but no one's willing to argue with divine aesthetics. As you tend to a bubbling stew, a sudden commotion outside the kitchen catches your attention. A troupe of musicians has arrived to entertain the midday crowd. Lyres, drums, and flutes filling the air with joyous noise. The palace guards try to keep order, but even they can't resist tapping a foot to the beat. You smile, thinking about how music and food share a strange kinship, both essential to lifting spirits and binding people together. The midday feast begins with a quiet ceremony. Platters of roasted lamb, barley bread, stuffed grape leaves, and sweet cakes are carried out on polished wooden trays. The king and queen sit at the head of the table, surrounded by their court, each guest savoring the complex flavors and aromatic spices. You watch discreetly from the kitchen doorway, heart swelling with quiet pride. This is your world, the place where ancient recipes meet the pulse of palace life. Later, as the guests disperse and the noise fades, you oversee the cleanup, watching the leftover scraps sorted and saved for future stews. You notice a strange scent in the air, dried herbs burning somewhere nearby, a subtle signal of protection and blessing, or maybe just a way to keep the palace pests at bay. Historians still debate the exact purpose of these smoke rituals, sacred, practical, or both. You're betting on a little bit of both. As afternoon slips toward evening, you catch a moment to sit and savor a small bowl of spiced lentils. The flavors are simple, honest, and deeply satisfying. It's a quiet reward after a day full of noise, fire, and relentless orders. You lean back and watch the sun dip low behind the palace walls, casting long shadows over the kitchen floor. Tomorrow, the cycle will begin anew. New dishes, new challenges, new chances to create something unforgettable. But for now, the kitchen breathes with you, slow and steady, a sanctuary of warmth and timeless rituals. The evening descends gently, carrying with it a hush that settles over the palace like a soft blanket. You're still in the kitchen, naturally, where the fading light casts flickering shadows across pots and pans like ghostly dancers. The day's noise has softened to a distant murmur, replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of chopping, stirring, and whispered instructions. You move with deliberate calm now, knowing the evening meal is more than just food. It's a final performance, a last chance to impress the king before night takes over. The air is thick with the scent of roasting spices and slow-cooked meats, mingling with the faint perfume of jasmine from the courtyard. Tonight's menu is ambitious. A layered stew of lamb, lentils, and dried apricots glazed with honey and pomegranate molasses. The recipe is ancient, rumored to have been served at the first palace feast, though historians still argue whether it was really fit for royalty or just a peasant's clever stew elevated by storytelling. You tend the pot carefully, letting the flavors meld and deepen, reminding yourself that patience is the secret ingredient in every great dish. Around you, the kitchen buzzes softly with activity. A group of apprentices busies themselves rolling dough for flatbreads, their hands moving in practiced circles as they coax the flour into soft, pliable rounds. You catch a glimpse of one apprentice humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like a royal anthem. Either that, or they're practicing for a future in palace entertainment. You smile and shake your head. In this kitchen, even the future musicians start with flour on their fingers. Near the hearth, a cook carefully prepares a rare delicacy, stuffed quail, seasoned with herbs and roasted over fragrant cedarwood chips. You remember reading about the quail's symbolism in ancient texts, a bird associated with protection and renewal. Some scholars debate whether these symbolic meanings influenced palace menus or were later romantic additions. You decide it doesn't matter much either way. Tonight, the quail smells amazing. The queen's steward arrives with a delicate request. Add more fenugreek to the stew. The queen finds it soothing. Fenugreek, its bittersweet aroma reminding you of both medicine and magic. You wonder if the queen's preference comes from tradition or simply a flair for the dramatic. The debate among historians over how much royal tastes influenced palace cuisine versus scribbled decrees feels like an unsolvable riddle. You choose to believe it's a bit of both, seasoned with a dash of palace intrigue. As the evening meal takes shape, a cook brings in a platter of fresh figs and dates, glistening with a honey glaze that catches the firelight like jewels. You sneak a taste, savoring the sticky sweetness and marveling at how such simple ingredients can feel so indulgent. A whisper circulates among the kitchen staff about how honey was once used as an offering to the gods, and less ceremoniously, as a bribe for good weather. You suspect it still works that way, both in ancient times and now. The palace musicians return, playing soft melodies that drift through the corridors and into the kitchen like a lullaby for the evening. The music seems to slow time itself, turning the bustling kitchen into a sanctuary of warmth and ritual. You pause to listen, feeling the notes wrap around you like a well-worn cloak. The evening feast begins with a muted ceremony. Platters pass carefully from hand to hand, rich aromas rising in delicate clouds. The king and queen sit surrounded by their court, savoring each bite with practiced grace. You watch, hidden in the shadows, your heart swelling with the quiet pride of a job well done. Later, as the guests retire and the kitchen winds down, you oversee the last cleanup. The glow of oil lamps flickers against the walls, casting gentle light on the worn faces of your team. You think about the endless cycle of food and fire, of preparation and presentation that defines this place. And you know you wouldn't have it any other way. Outside, the palace gardens hum softly with the night's first insects, and a cool breeze stirs the jasmine. You step out briefly, breathing in the sweet, peaceful air. For a moment, the palace feels less like a place of work and more like a home, messy, fragrant, alive. Inside, the kitchen waits for tomorrow, and you are ready. Night deepens, wrapping the palace in velvety darkness dotted with flickers of torchlight. You linger in the kitchen's quiet corners, where the clatter and chatter have finally faded away like an echo from another lifetime. The fires that once roared with urgency now glow low, casting a gentle warmth over the cool stone floor. You lean against a worn wooden table, eyes tracing the intricate carvings that tell stories of harvests, hunts, and feasts long past. The kitchen feels like a living memory, every crack in the wall and scratch on the counter a witness to centuries of meals prepared and eaten. Tonight's leftovers are being packed carefully, herbs wrapped in linen, spiced meat sealed in clay pots, jars of honey and preserved fruits lined up in neat rows. You think about the scavengers and servants who will find sustenance in these remnants, how nothing here truly goes to waste. Historians still argue whether such practices were born out of necessity or a deeper respect for resources, but you suspect it's a bit of both, survival entwined with ritual. You take a moment to examine the kitchen's arsenal. Bronze knives dulled by constant use, wooden spoons worn smooth, and massive stone grinders still dusted with flour. Each tool tells its own tale of sweat and skill, of countless hands that shape them into instruments of culinary artistry. You remember the curious tidbit you once read. Some cooks rubbed crocodile dung on their hands to prevent slipping while chopping. You grimace but admire their inventiveness. The kitchen's history is full of these strange little inventions, a blend of practical knowledge and bold, sometimes questionable, experimentation. From outside the kitchen, the soft murmur of palace guards on their nightly rounds reaches your ears. They move like shadows, vigilant and tireless, guarding secrets as old as the walls themselves. You wonder how much palace life the guards ever see. The feasts, the intrigues, the quiet moments in the kitchen, and how much remains hidden beneath layers of protocol. Scholars debate whether the palace kitchens operated in isolation from court politics or were deeply entwined with the power struggles of the day. You think the truth is probably spicy enough to fill a banquet hall. You wander to a small side chamber where jars of exotic spices from distant lands rest. Cinnamon, cardamom, and the elusive sumac that adds a tart brightness to many dishes. The spices smell like adventure and possibility, each one a reminder of the far-reaching trade routes that connect this palace to the wider world. It's amazing to think that even here, centuries ago, the flavors of distant places could mingle on a single plate. You catch a flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye, a lone rat darting between shadows, quick as a whisper. You shoo it gently. Pests are part of the kitchen's ecosystem, but they don't get invited to the banquet. You think about the endless dance between order and chaos in the kitchen, and how each day you fight to keep the chaos at bay. As the night deepens, you find yourself humming an old tune, a melody passed down by cooks long gone, sung softly as dough was kneaded and stews stirred. It's a comforting thread connecting you to the past and the countless kitchen hands who came before. You set the lamps low, letting the kitchen sink into restful shadows. Outside, the stars shine bright over the palace, silent witnesses to the endless cycle of feast and fast, work and rest. Tomorrow waits, promising new flavors, new challenges, and new stories to be written in flour and fire. But for now, the kitchen sleeps. Dawn arrives quietly, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold. You step into the kitchen once more, where the first faint glow of morning light filters through small windows, casting long shadows across the cool stone floor. The air smells fresh, tinged with a faint trace of last night's spices and the earthy scent of stored grains. This moment feels sacred, the pause before the day begins, when the kitchen holds its breath in anticipation. You can almost hear the whisper of ancient cooks greeting the new day, their voices carried on the breeze that slips beneath the palace gates. Your hands move automatically, unpacking sacks of flour and bundles of fresh vegetables brought from the palace gardens before dawn. The rhythm of the kitchen is waking up, the soft scrape of knife on board, the gentle thud of dough being kneaded, the low murmur of apprentices whispering plans for the day's meals. You feel the pulse of the place again, steady and sure, like the beating heart of the palace itself. You pause at the spice rack, fingers trailing over familiar jars of cumin, coriander, and anise. Today's menu will be simple: barley porridge with honey, roasted vegetables glazed with pomegranate molasses, and a rich stew to warm the body after a long night's rest. Historians still debate how much the royal kitchen changed with the seasons versus sticking to a fixed culinary tradition. You suspect that, like everything else in the palace, it was a delicate balance between innovation and ritual. Outside, you hear the stir of the palace guards beginning their rounds, their footsteps echoing softly through the corridors. The royal household is awakening too, the faint sounds of voices, laughter, and the occasional clang of a metal cup being set down. You remind yourself that every meal you prepare is part of this larger rhythm, the daily nourishment of power, ceremony, and life. You begin to prepare the barley, watching the grains swell and soften in simmering water, the scent rising like a promise of comfort. In another corner, apprentices set out fresh flatbreads, their warm dough still soft beneath their fingers. You smile, remembering how these simple foods have sustained this palace through years of prosperity and hardship alike. There's a quiet moment when you stand still, surrounded by the bustling kitchen, and let yourself soak in the scene. The warmth, the smells, the soft murmur of human activity all around you. This is more than a job. It's a living tradition, a daily dance between the past and the present, the sacred and the mundane. A final curious thought drifts through your mind, a reminder that the ancient kitchen was never just about feeding bodies, but also about feeding stories, connections, and a sense of belonging. The cooks, the scribes, the servants, all weaving their lives together through the simple act of breaking bread. As the first bowls are filled and carried away, you take a slow breath and let the moment stretch, feeling the quiet satisfaction of being part of something timeless. The palace kitchen waits for no one, but it always welcomes those who understand its rhythm and respect its secrets. And you, of course, are one of those lucky few. Now, a soft wind down, as promised. The kitchen grows still once more, the bustling energy fading like a distant dream. You find yourself sinking into a slow, deep breath, letting the warmth of the hearth and the quiet of the palace wrap around you like a gentle embrace. Outside, the stars twinkle softly, their ancient light drifting through the night air, whispering of endless cycles and quiet continuity. All around, the scents of herbs, smoke, and sweet honey linger in the shadows, a gentle reminder of the day's labors and joys. You imagine the cooks of long ago settling down after their work, hands tired but hearts full, knowing they have nourished more than just bodies. They have sustained a way of life. And now, as you lie back and let your mind drift, you carry with you the rhythms and flavors of a time long past but never truly gone. The palace kitchen stories have become a part of you, soft, enduring, and quietly alive. Sleep well, knowing that in the quiet spaces between day and night, the ancient fires of this kitchen still burn bright.